The silence after the applause. The night the world lost Menglong. The night was made of gold lights and hollow noise. Cameras flashed like lightning against a smile, and the stage beneath his feet trembled with the rhythm of thousands cheering his name. Menglong! Menglong! It was supposed to be one of those triumphant nights. The kind artists dream of: a sold-out show, a final bow, a celebration of years spent under the glow of fame. But as the applause thundered and waves of admiration crashed around him, Menglong's heart was somewhere else. Quiet, distant, fading. When the curtain fell that night, so did something inside him. It wasn't death in the way the world understands it. No blood, no goodbye letter, no tragic scene. But something far deeper, the quiet death of self. The moment the applause stopped echoing, the man behind the perfection vanished into silence. He bowed one last time, smiled one last time, and walked off the stage into a darkness that no spotlight could reach. Backstage was chaos. Assistants, stylists, and managers swarming around him, shouting instructions, fixing his collar, chasing him with microphones. He nodded politely, every gesture rehearsed, every smile mechanical. The noise pressed against him like a wall. But behind his eyes there was stillness, a silence so heavy that even the buzz of fame couldn't touch it. Menglong, just one photo, one last wave, someone called. He turned, raised his hand, and smiled, that same signature smile that melted millions of hearts across the world. The crowd screamed, the cameras blinked, and in that moment he realized his smile didn't belong to him anymore. It was theirs. He had given it away piece by piece over the years, to fans who needed comfort, to interviews that demanded joy, to brands that bought beauty, to a world that never wanted the truth, only perfection. When he finally walked into his dressing room, the door clicked shut, and for the first time that night, the sound was real. No cheering, no applause, just the sound of his own breath trembling in the dark. He sat down before the mirror, still glowing from the lights of the stage, and stared at his reflection. It was strange. He could see his face, but not himself. The boy who once loved music, who found warmth in every chord, who used to laugh freely, he was gone. In his place sat an image sculpted by the world's expectations. Every hair in place, every emotion measured, every dream tailored to fit the public's desire. He looked at the mirror until the lights blurred, and then he whispered, "Who am I when no one's watching?" No one answered. Outside, the crew celebrated the show's success. Laughter spilled down the hallways, champagne glasses clinked, and somewhere, a reporter shouted his name into a live camera feed, declaring the performance the pinnacle of Menglong's career. But inside that small, dimly lit room, there was only stillness. He leaned back, eyes closed, listening to the sound of celebration fading through the walls, and for a fleeting moment he wished he could trade all of it for a single moment of quiet truth. He remembered the beginning, small studios, cheap microphones, nights when he sang not for fame, but because music was his only language. Back then, applause wasn't noise, it was connection. It meant someone felt something real. Now it was just a wall of sound, loud enough to drown him. He reached for his phone. Dozens of unread messages blinked at him. Interviews tomorrow. Schedules. Reminders. None said, "Are you okay?" Later that night, he walked out of the building alone. The city air was sharp, the kind that cuts through the layers of perfume and lights and forces you to feel something raw. His footsteps echoed down the empty street, the same rhythm as the applause that haunted his ears. He pulled his cap low, his face half hidden. No fans, no cameras, just the whisper of the wind and the hum of distant traffic. It was freedom, but it came too late. He stopped by a street performer, a young man singing under a flickering light, strumming an old guitar with raw passion. The boy's voice cracked, but it was real. It was imperfect, honest, alive. Menglong stood there for a long moment, watching, listening. The song wasn't perfect, but it had something his own music had lost, a heartbeat. When the song ended, He dropped a folded bill into the boy's case. The boy looked up, eyes wide with recognition, but you only smiled a soft, tired human smile, and walked away before the words, "You're you Menglong," could be spoken. Back home, the silence greeted him like an old friend. The walls were white, clean, empty, no noise, no warmth. His trophies glimmered coldly under soft light, rows of golden statues standing as proof of success and loneliness alike. He walked past them without looking. In the corner, a piano waited, untouched for weeks. Dust had gathered on the keys, as though even the music had grown tired of waiting for him. He sat before it, running his fingers across the ivory. It felt like touching memory. The first note he played trembled, fragile, like the sound of something trying to come back to life. He played quietly, slowly, not the kind of music the audience expected, not the polished melodies that filled his albums. This was raw, unfiltered, aching. A conversation between himself and the silence that had lived inside him for years. As he played, tears slipped down his cheeks, not from sadness, but from recognition. For the first time in a long time, he felt something that was his own. The melody grew softer, dissolving into the night, until it was barely more than a whisper. When the final note faded, he stayed there, hands still resting on the keys, listening to the silence that followed. It was heavy, but it was also honest. The next morning, the headlines celebrated him. Yu Minglong's record-breaking performance. Another historic night for China's Prince of Emotion. Fans can't stop talking about his final bow. But none of those stories told the truth. None saw the quiet room, the lonely walk, the silent piano. Because the world didn't want to lose the image of Yu Menglong. They wanted the star, not the man. And so, while the world celebrated, the real Yu Menglong quietly stepped back, not from life, but from the noise. He disappeared into simplicity. No announcements, no drama. He turned off his phone, deleted his social apps, and took a train out of the city. To everyone else, he was still out there somewhere, preparing for the next role, the next album, the next illusion. But to himself, he was finally gone, free from the weight of being perfect. The world lost Yu Menglong that night, but maybe, just maybe, he found himself. Months passed. Fans replayed his last performance, describing it as magical, divine, unforgettable. They didn't realize what they were really watching was a goodbye. Every movement, every note, every smile was a slow release, the unraveling of a man saying farewell to the version of himself the world demanded. Somewhere, far from the city's noise, Yu Menglong lived quietly. Maybe he taught music to children. Maybe he walked through small markets where no one recognized him. Maybe he wrote songs under a different name, songs that would never make it to the charts but would make him feel alive. No one really knew. The world kept moving. The lights of the city still blinked, screens still glowed with his image, and fans still filled timelines with words of adoration. But the man they loved was no longer there to see it. In the digital world, Yu Menglong's presence was everywhere. His smile framed in advertisements, his voice looped in short videos, his laughter remixed into sound bites that strangers used to express joy. The world still spoke his language, but he no longer answered. He had disappeared into stillness, leaving only echoes. Yet silence has a sound, the kind that grows louder the longer you listen. Some said he had gone abroad. Others said he was taking a long creative break. But those close to him knew he wasn't chasing new fame or comfort. He was chasing quiet. He had rented a small cabin on the edge of a sleepy coastal town, where mornings smelled of salt and rain. There was no stage, no applause, no waiting cameras. Only seagulls crying over the water and the slow rhythm of waves against the shore. The first few weeks were strange. His hands still itched for a phone, his reflexes still rehearsed polite smiles when strangers passed. Years of performance had trained his body to act before it felt. But here there was no audience, no need to perform. For the first time, he allowed himself to do nothing. He would sit by the sea from dawn till night, watching the tide breathe. He noticed things fame had stolen from him. How the sun rises in silence, how the sea changes color every hour, how the world keeps its beauty even when no one is looking. It felt like learning to live again. One evening a storm rolled in. The wind howled through the trees. Rain drummed against the roof like an impatient audience demanding an encore. Lightning flashed, and for a brief second his reflection appeared in the window. Tired eyes, hair unkempt, face unpainted. He didn't look like the man on the billboards, and yet for the first time he didn't flinch. He lit a candle, sat before the piano he had brought from the city, and began to play. The storm outside blended with his melody, wild, unrestrained, and perfect. Each note carried the weight of everything he had kept hidden for years: exhaustion, regret, tenderness, and a strange, fragile peace. The candle flickered, the sea roared, and in that chaos he finally felt alive. As the days passed, villagers began to notice him, the quiet stranger who bought groceries at the same hour every evening, who smiled softly but never spoke of his past. A little girl once approached him at the pier, her small hand holding a broken seashell. "Can you fix it?" she asked innocently. He looked at it, cracked, incomplete, and smiled. "Some things aren't meant to be fixed," he said gently. "They're meant to be loved, even when they're broken." The girl didn't understand then, but she smiled back, clutching the shell to her chest as though his words were a kind of magic. And maybe they were, because that night, for the first time in years, he laughed. Not the polished, camera-ready laugh the world had memorized, but something soft and clumsy and real. Sometimes he dreamed of the stage. In those dreams, the applause was endless, a roaring wave that wouldn't stop. He'd bow again and again, smiling, trapped in a loop of adoration that felt like suffocation. The lights would blind him, and somewhere in the crowd, a voice would whisper, "Do they love you, or what you give them?" He would wake up drenched in sweat, the echo of that question still burning in his mind. He didn't know the answer. Maybe both, maybe neither. But with every sunrise by the sea, he began to understand something simpler, that the applause was never real if he couldn't hear his own heartbeat beneath it. Months turned into a year. His name still trended online occasionally. Old fans reminiscing, new fans discovering his art. Rumors circulated he's writing again. He's sick. He's in hiding. But Menglong never returned to confirm or deny any of it. One cold morning, a journalist tracked him down, standing outside his cabin with a camera and cautious smile. "I'm sorry to intrude," she said, her breath visible in the fog. "The world misses you. They want to know when you'll come back." He paused, hands tucked in his coat pockets. The sea behind him whispered endlessly, pulling and releasing, like a giant heartbeat. "Back where?" he asked. She hesitated. "The stage, the spotlight, the fans. They're waiting." He smiled faintly. "The thing about applause," he said softly, "is that it always ends. But silence stays. And that's where I found myself." The journalist lowered her camera. For once, she forgot to take the picture. When she finally spoke, her voice trembled. "Can I tell them that?" He looked out at the horizon, where the sky met the sea in a soft blur. "No," he whispered. "Tell them to keep clapping. It's what they need. But me, I'm done performing." And with that, he turned away, leaving her standing there in the mist, holding a story too heavy for headlines. That evening, he sat again at the piano. His fingers found a new melody, light, uncertain, but filled with hope. It was the sound of beginning again, the sound of life after noise. He wrote the words on a scrap of paper beside him. "The silence isn't empty. It's where the truth finally speaks." Outside, the sea shimmered under the moonlight, like thousands of hands clapping quietly for him. Not in admiration, but in understanding. He smiled, his reflection faint in the glass, not the idol the world adored, not the mask he used to wear, but a man who had finally made peace with the quiet. That night he didn't dream of applause. He dreamed of rain, of laughter, of unfinished songs. He dreamed of life, unfiltered and unperformed. And though the world still searched for him, through old interviews, lyrics, and documentaries, none could truly find him again. Because the Menglong they were looking for had died long ago, under a blinding light, surrounded by cheers that never really belonged to him. What lived now was something different. Not a celebrity, not an icon, but a soul reborn in silence. The crowd never knew it, but when they applauded that final night, it wasn't just the end of a concert. It was the funeral of his former self. The man they loved didn't vanish. He simply walked into the quiet where applause could no longer reach. And in that silence he began to live.